mobile phones. That is the most important thing we ask of the audiences before our lectures. Turn off your mobile phones and please make sure if you do take photos that your mobile phones don't make noises. Anything, no mobile noises of any kind, please, during the lecture. Thank you all for coming. I'm Adam Talib. I teach in the Department of Arab and Islamic Civilizations at the American University in Cairo. We are very, very pleased to be hosting Professor Bassam Tibi this year as the Bayard-Dodge Visiting Professor. As many of you know, the Bayard-Dodge Visiting Professorship is supported by the Bayard-Dodge Foundation. It allows us to bring leading scholars from the Arab world and from Europe and North America to Cairo to give a series of lectures, including lectures in Arabic. Some of you were able to attend Professor Tibi's lecture on Thursday evening, which was in Arabic. Today's lecture will be in English. And as many of you know, in the past few years, we've brought Professors Adam Sabra and Dwight Reynolds, and we have not yet decided who we're going to bring in academic year 2016-2017, but if you give us your email addresses, many of you have seen the email sign-up sheet, you will be informed about those forthcoming lectures. I don't know what to say about Professor Tibi that has not already been said over the past few days. Professor Tibi is, of course, a Professor Emeritus of International Relations at the Universität Göttingen, but he's held professorships around the world. Professor Tibi has held more than 18 visiting professorships during his 40-year career, including prominent professorships at Cornell and Harvard universities. He is now retired and makes his home in Göttingen. We're very happy to have him here in Cairo, a city which he knows extremely well, but which he has not visited since 2004. Is that correct? Yeah. We're also very happy to have Professor Tibi on the eve of the publication of his first work to be translated into Arabic. Many of you know Professor Tibi's more than 40 books, which he writes in English and German, have been translated into 16 world languages, and we're finally going to have an Arabic translation of his book, Islam and Islamism. Is that right?
No, Islam's Predicament with Modernity.
Islam's Predicament with Modernity.
The honor is that the great scholar sitting here in the first row, he is the one who arranged this, and Professor Siraj will be writing the introduction to this book. It's my life work on Islam. Islam's Predicament with Modernity.
Yeah. So we look forward to that will be published in Lebanon. Today's talk is based on a 2013 book that Professor Tibi published with Routledge called The Sharia State, the Arab Spring and Democratization. And I invite him to speak for no more than an hour, and we will then entertain questions. As many of you know, last time we did not get to many of the questions because there were so many. And I encourage you all to please make your questions short. Right? The more concise your question, the more questions we can accommodate and have a more productive conversation. Okay. Please help me in welcoming Professor Tibi.
Okay, thank you. You know, this time my home is Damascus, and my home is a ruin today. Yeah? It's very sad, but I left Damascus in the age of 18, and in the past 50 or more years, I've been looking for a substitute for Damascus, and I did not find it. I'm writing at the moment my memoirs, and in the search, lost between cultures, in the search for a home. Yeah? Well, one of the Ersatz Heimat, a substitute home, is also Cairo. Yeah, but in this 50 years old trip across the world, I learned to compare. Yeah. And before I start, there's one commonality between Germans and Arabs, including Egyptians. Yeah? In conferences, in Arab conferences, when Germans ask question, instead of asking question, they make a co-presentation of 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah? And when the chairperson start asking, what is the question? Said, it will come. And after 10 minutes, it doesn't come. Yeah? And this happens also in Cairo. Yeah? So this is a commonality between Germans and Egyptians. Yeah? Okay, but I hope you follow the instruction of of Dr. Adam that you make the point. What's the point in the question, and then I'll answer it. Yeah? My presentation, it's now 7 minutes after 5, and I stop exactly at 6 o'clock. Yeah? Also, there's another commonality between Germans and Arabs in general. I think it's not only Egyptians, yeah? You know, like in the United States, if you come late, people say he or she is operating on Middle Eastern time. And, you know, when a professor, when a distinguished professor is lecturing, and if a person stops him, and I have witnessed this many times, the distinguished professor stands up and walk out in protest, yeah? You cannot stop distinguished professor. But in Harvard, they do. In Harvard, you get, in a conference, a presentation, 20 minutes. And if you exceed that, they said before they send you, you still have 5 minutes, you still have 3 minutes, and then you still have 2 minutes. And the chairperson comes and said, please stop. If you don't stop, we assist you to stop, yeah? But there's one business like this in Germany, television. I was for 11 years commentator on Islam and the Middle East in Zweiten Deutschen Fernsehen. This is one of the 2 major channels in Germany. And they say, for answering a question, we ask you, as an expert in a news program, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds. And if you exceed, you can continue, but we take the camera away. Yeah? So I will stop in 50 minutes, exactly at 6 o'clock, without the need that Adam comes over and assists me in stopping. Yeah? My presentation is structured. I learned free speech in television, and not at the university, in television, and also in the United States. Yeah? And so I will make my presentation in free speech. It consists of 4 parts. The first part is an introduction, followed by 3 parts, which I will outline later on. In the introduction, I present my basic ideas, and I start with this. I claim to be a founder of a new approach to the study of Islam, which I name Islamology. Islamology is not traditional Islamic studies like taught at American and European universities. Islamology, or people who are supposed to study Islamology and be Islamologists, you deal with the really existing Islam, not with the text. Yeah? Because the text, what you said, the waqi' and the nas, yeah? And we study, and the founder of sociology of religion is a French sociologist, Émile Durkheim, in his major work, Les règles de la méthode sociologique. Those who don't speak French, the rules of sociological method, c'est l'étude de la religion. The study of religion is a study of a fait social, a social fact. Yeah? So if I want to study why do Egyptians have 5 children or 6 children, why do Egyptians do this and that, I will not find an answer for that in the Quran, nor in the Hadith. I have to study how do they perceive Islam and how do they practice Islam. And this might be, at times, maybe 100% in contrast to the text. So the text does not help understanding the reality. So Islamology is a study of, Islam as a fait social, social realities of Islam. And one of these realities that I shall focus on in this lecture is the use of Sharia in Islamic politics. I shall not talk here about Sharia itself in a scholarly manner. There's a great scholar sitting here in front, Dr. Siraj, who is much more qualified than I am in talking about the Sharia. I will be talking about the use of the Sharia by Islamist movement, and the framework of this research was the fundamentalism project run or conducted at the American Academy of Art and Sciences between the late 80s and the mid 90s. We published 5 volumes like this, few thousand pages, by Chicago University Press. I co-authored volume 2, Fundamentalisms and Society, and my job was to look at the Islamism at 2 points. How do they deal with technology? How do they deal with technology, modern technology, and natural sciences? And the other hand, how do they deal with law and politics? And here, I'll leave the part of Islamization, the effort at Islamization of natural sciences and technology as an agenda of Islamism. because this is not the focus. Well, they view the Quran, for example, they view the Quran as encyclopedia of sciences. And I asked, when that was a great honor for me, during running that project, I spent a lot of time in Cairo. I worked in 20 different Islamic countries, Arab and non-Arab. Yeah? The non-Arab were in West Africa and Southeast Asia, and the Arab was number one, Egypt. In September 89, I spent 5 hours, full 5 hours, with Jadul Haq, Ali Jadul Haq, and I asked him, the Islamists that I have interviewed, they were mostly, in particular here in Cairo, they were not from Al-Azhar, they were from natural sciences, engineering, and they know very little about Islam. Yeah? And they view the Quran as an encyclopedia of sciences. And Shaykh al-Azhar told me this is the greatest harm for Islam, because if you have a chemical or physical theory, you can check it empirically in the laboratorium. Yeah, the Quran is not made for this. Yeah, and he said the Quran is kitabu hidayah, is not an encyclopedia of sciences. And also in my field here, the focus on law, Islam is not a legal book. There's Sharia in the Quran, but Sharia is much more than a legal issue, as I shall argue. First, it is a fact. I did not invent it, and many or most of the Islamists that I have interviewed, they didn't know this fact. Yeah? They say there's a description of Sharia as a constitution of a political system, and all described in the Quran. And I did not find this in the Quran. In the Quran, you read in Surah Al-Jathiyah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ثم جعلناك على شريعة من الأمر فاتبعوها. And my understanding of this, and I asked, including Dr. Siraj, understanding of this is not a legal concept, this is an ethical concept. Fazlur Rahman, if you don't know him, but I hope you know him, Fazlur Rahman is a Pakistani great scholar of Islam. He had to leave Pakistan for political reasons and became a very great professor at the University of Chicago. He wrote dozens of books, but in his book, Islam and Modernity, he argues clearly, Sharia is not a law. Sharia is a morality. Yeah? And also, other scholars argue in this direction. I also follow Ashmawi, who passed away, and I know him very well. And in his book, Usul al-Sharia, he argues in this direction. So this is the first remark. The second remark is about legal thinking in Islam. Yeah, there is something which Dr. Siraj calls the Islamic legal system, or you use sophonym legal system. You use also Sharia system and law system. Yeah, so three definitions: law system, legal system, and the Sharia system. I would have lost my life. I was in Pakistan 1995 and delivered a lecture about Sharia, and I argued Sharia as practiced, the Sharia of the Madhahib. But this is a fact. I did not invent the fact. All the founders of the Madhahib, they lived in the 8th century, so 100 years after Quranic revelation. So the creation of Islamic law within the framework of the Madhahib happened in the 8th century, not in the 7th century, which means their construction of a legal system based on their reading of the Quran is post-Quranic. And that was considered to be heresy. And many people said you should go hiding. It was published the next day on the front page of The Dawn. This is the leading English newspaper in Karachi. But thanks God, I kept alive, and so I'm also here. That was 95. That was 95. That was 30 years ago, 31 years ago. Yeah. So there is a tradition of Islamic. In the Quran, Sharia is not a law. Sharia is in the Quran, al-amru bil-ma'ruf wa-nahy an al-munkar. This is Islamic morality is my top understanding of Islam. And we say, for Muslims who cheats, including taxi drivers, you say you should learn a little bit more from the Quran. But the Quran is a morality, and al-amru bil ma'ruf wa nahy al-munkar means do not cheat. If you cheat, you are not a good Muslim. Yeah? So many Muslims need to learn Sharia as a morality. But there is a Sharia as a legal system, which was constructed and created in the 8th century. But Sharia is not law in the narrow understanding of law. My American colleague, John Kelsey, I hope he's well known here, in his most recent, he wrote many books, but in his most recent books, a book published by On Jihad, published by Harvard University Press, he identifies all traditions of Islamic thought, legal and non-legal, as Sharia reasoning. So Islamic thought, when Muslims think, they should think within the framework of the Sharia, and he identified this as a Sharia reasoning. The third point in the presentation, and maybe this is the most important one, referring to the claim that I'm a social scientist and not philologian, with a reference to a professor at Oxford University, he passed away, Eric Hobsbawm. He coined the term invention of tradition. So this happens in many cultures. People refer to a tradition without being 100% familiar with it, and they invent something and read their thinking into it, and this can be called invention of tradition. Actually, the use of the Sharia by Islamist movement is an invention of tradition. Because they know very little about it. Like knowing that Sharia consists of 3 elements, ibadat, worship, mu'amalat, civil law, and hudud, penal code. So hudud means in Sharia penal code. And I did this also here in Cairo in interviews with Islamist students in Ain Shams and Jamiat al-Qahira, and I asked the question, أنت تريد تطبيق الشريعة. You want to implement the Sharia? Yes. Then, if you want that, you live, that was in the past century, you live in the 20th century. How do you want, in the 20th century, implement the hudud? And the answer, was the لا حدود في الإسلام. Yeah? And I said, I'm not talking about geography. الإسلام عالمي ولا يعرف الحدود. I'm not talking about الحدود الجغرافية. I'm talking حدود as a penal code. And they didn't know that. This is not even the term. Yeah? This is an evidence that somebody wants to implement the Sharia and they don't know what hudud means. Therefore, I think this notion of or this notion coined by Eric Hobsbawm, Invention of Tradition, in an edited book. He wrote only the introduction, but the notion has become a very famous one, and I use it in my research. The Islamists, but you can see this also in other religions in a comparative way. Yeah? They talk about al-asala, authenticity, in the meaning also of purity, and they talk in modern terms, they use modern concepts while they are talking about the asala. I elaborated on this notion 2 days ago in my lecture in held in Arabic about al-hadatha, modernity, like people who are against modernity, and they use modern concepts and modern notions and claim to be committed to the asala. But asala is not wrong, yeah? In terms of, I want to be an authentic Muslim, but I'm against purity, yeah? Because, my model, in political science, is Al-Farabi, al-Madina al-Fadila. And without Plato and Aristotle, there could be no kitab, al-Madina al-Fadila. So, but he was a good Muslim. In my view, Farabi was a good Muslim. But also this applies to Ibn Rushd, Ibn Sina. So purity, actually the greatness of Islam, its ability to accommodate to different environments. So how could Islam become like the greatest nation, in terms of numbers on the earth, is Indonesia. And Indonesians do not consider Islam as intrusion into their culture. This is part of their life. Islam was able to accommodate there. But the Wahhabis that I met in Indonesia, in Jakarta above all, they try to teach Indonesians they have a wrong Islam. Because in Indonesian Islam, this is for you, this is a lot of urf. Yeah? But they call, this is part pre-Islamic cultures, but they integrated into Islam, and Islam was able to accommodate this. And they don't view Islam as alien because it was compatible with their urf. Yeah? And the Saudis, the Saudi Wahhabis who are there, or those who are paid by the Wahhabis, they teach them this is the wrong Islam. And okay, so now I can move to the second part of my lecture. The case in point is what I have coined the term, because a verb of Sharia does not exist, Shariatization of Islam. Yeah? The Shariatization of Islam is more than a Sharia, Islam comprehensive, but to say there's a legal system, and this legal system is basically political, and the name of this political system is Sharia, and it is a basis of the Islamic State. They argue that this is what Islam was all about, and that's why I use the term Shariatization of Islam. There's another verb that I have coined in English and in German. If you look to the Oxford Dictionary in English, you will not find it, and in German Duden, you'll not find it either. But I hope after my death, it will be added, and people will say that I have introduced this. I make a verb out of religion. Like for instance, in Egypt, you have demographic problems. You have housing problems. They have nothing to do with religion. They have nothing to do with Islam. Islam is not responsible that people are poor, etc., etc. But the Islamists, they refer to social, political problems and all kind of problems, and they address these problems in religious terms. And the meaning for that is religionization of politics, of religionization of social conflict. And so there is a Shariatization of law, of the state, of the polity, and also religionization of politics and society. Yeah? And I find all what I'm talking about in the writings of Hassan al-Banna. I almost read every single word he published. It's not a lot, but it was not difficult. But Hassan al-Banna, many people talk about this. Like my last book in English was Islamism and Islam, and in some reviewers say the contested concept of Islamism, and they argue Islamism is a term imposed by the West on Islamist movement because they don't use it. But if you read the writings of Hassan al-Banna, there is an essay by him. He said, "Al-Islam as-Sahih huwa al-Islamiyya," and so Islamism is a term coined by him, not by me. Yeah? And he says true Islam is Deen wa Dawla, and the term Dawla does not occur in the Quran. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Not even the Prophet used it, Dawla. Yeah. This is the basic term in Islam. Muslims are ummah and not dawla. So, and ummah is not a political order. Ummah is a community of believers based on shared values and shared beliefs. So the idea of the Islamic State, which now unashamedly the name of a terrorist movement, and Islam has nothing to do with terrorism. Islam prohibits terrorism, but the name of the major terrorist movement today is the Islamic State, and the term Islamic State is a Sharia state, and this is even you do harm to Islam on two levels. First, you associate Islam with terrorism, which is wrong, and second, you use the term of Sharia. And Sharia is not a call to kill people, as ISIS is doing. Islam is a call for tolerance, for understanding, and for amru bil ma'ruf wa nahy al munkar. To kill somebody, and no assumption he is an unbeliever, this against Quranic rules. And the Quran says, وَإِن شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ كُلُّ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Like once I must tell you this, well, I think I can manage with the time. I promised I really will stop at 6 o'clock. Yeah? In March 1993, I was visiting at the Université Mohammed V in Rabat, and I was invited to go to Casablanca and deliver a lecture in Arabic and French, Al-Islam ala muftaraq al-turuq, Islam ala croisée de chemin. Yeah. And I argued, I mean, this is the idea that exists in my book, which is Dr. Sraj is preparing in Arabic, Islam's Predicament of Modernity, because I've been working on the book, on the unfolding of this idea more than 20 years. And I said, we have problem with modernity. In Islam is, in French, à la croisée des chemins, à la muftaraq al-turuq. And we have to take a decision. We have to introduce reforms. And when I went out, yeah, on my way out, there were about 30 Islamists. I had maybe 500 people listening to me in a big aula of the University of Casablanca, Dar Bayda, and they started hitting me and they said, "You are kafir, you are doing harm to Islam." And I started bleeding. They took my tie, and the lecture was arranged within a German-Moroccan exchange, cultural exchange. So the dean of the faculty was there, the president of the university was there, and also the German ambassador. And they said, I mean, it was happening so fast, and said, we cannot call the police to the campus. This is against our rules, academic rules. And we say, I mean, Allah yarhamu, yeah? So I mean, this was the mentality. But and really, after maybe 2 or 3 minutes, these people dispersed. There were about 30 people surrounding, 30 people against one person. And they dispersed, and what happened? And the German ambassador asked me, did you apply magie noire, black magic? Said, no, I quoted the Quran, and they walked away. And then I told him I'm a Muslim, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. They did not help, said everybody can say that, yeah? And then I said, هل تقبلون القرآن فارقا بيننا? And they said yes, yeah? Then I quoted this verse, وَإِنْ شَاءَ رَبَّكَ كُلَّ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Said, I'm a believer, but if you say I'm not a believer, it is a problem between Allah and me. You have nothing to do with that. That did not help. But then I quoted Al-Fan al-Baqarah. This is, I hope to get it now. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. No. That's the وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. And I said, you are mu'tadeen, and Allah will punish you. I go to heaven, and you go to the Jahim. And they stopped and walked away, afraid of Jahim. Yeah? So I mean, but this is, I mean, so the research on political Islam was not easy and was not undangerous, to say the least. I published in the past 20 years 3 books, or a trilogy, 3 books consisting of 3 books. Trilogy or trilogy? Yeah. Trilogy, yeah. The first was 1998, published by California University Press, The Challenge of Fundamentalism, Political Islam and the New World Disorder. The next one was 10 years later, Political Islam, World Politics in Europe. And the third was at the end of my career, 2012, Islamism and Islam, published by Yale University Press. Yeah. And the finding about now Islamism and the worldview of Islamic fundamentalists, it's published in volume 2 of the 5 volumes of the Fundamentalism Project, published by Chicago University Press. So the findings, I'm still in the first part, the major findings, this is a general part about political Islam. My general findings about political Islam can be summarized in 4 points. First, there is no such thing as Dawla Islamiyya in the Islamic heritage and in the authoritative sources of Islam, above all in the Quran and in the Hadith. Number two, the Islamic Sharia state is not the Khilafah. Yeah? Well, actually, Hassan al-Banna tried many times to evade talking about the Khilafah. And when he was asked, at the time was the debate about restoration of the caliphate. Yeah? And he said, do you want to restore the caliphate? He said, we have no problems with restoration or not restoration, the caliphate, but the problem is a different one. And he addressed us in this way. What we want is a nizam al-Islami. And nizam al-Islami is al-Islam huwa deen wa dawla. And this is the Islamic state. So the Sharia state is basically not a caliphate, even though the ISIS uses the term now. And they call their leader, who's more than a comedian than comedian, more a comedian than a true believer. This is caliphs. I mean, this is laughable. A person like this as a khalif. We are now, we Muslims, we are now 2 billion people, yeah, living in as a majority in 57 states and minorities all over the world. So, but the Islamic Sharia state is not the caliphate, even though this has to be defined with regard to ISIS. But when it comes to the Muslim brothers, they don't talk about the Khilafah. And they were not involved in the movement and debate over the restoration of the caliphate. Yeah? Number three, the claim is, however, the claim for an Islamic state is, however, articulated in Islamic terms. We cannot escape that. In Germany, the problem, you know, they are people, well-doer. But in German, this is more with contempt, say, Gutmenschen. Gutmenschen, people, you see, in Germany, I have problems in Germany. They are, I hope the majority of Germans are good people, yeah? But there are in Germany 2 extremes. One extreme is the right wing, and to them we are invaders, and they don't want to have any Muslim on European earth. And you have exactly the opposite to this. We call them in German Gutmenschen, or say well-doers, yeah? And these people say Islamists are poor people, and they're persecuted, and they're persecuted at home, like in Egypt, they call President Sisi. I once had this is politics. I should avoid, but you said they call President Sisi putschist in German, like. And they say what happens, coup d'etat, and the end of democracy, and this is to establish new dictatorship. And when President Sisi came to Germany, I was in Berlin, even the president of the parliament refused to receive him. Yeah? And I said to him, this is an insult for an elected president, and you cannot say Egyptian people are happy that they don't have mercy anymore. And for you, it is the end of democracy. For the Egyptian people, is the end of a nightmare. You see, they argue ISIS, these people, but they have also a lot of power in the media. They argue ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood or what have you, they have nothing to do with Islam. Yeah? We respect Islam. And this is a great improvement, a great progress. Respect Islam, but they do not differentiate. So, if terrorists are Muslims, then you have to respect them. Or you say they have nothing to do with Islam. But you see, the fight against terrorism, I hope, this is not the theme, but maybe we can discuss it later on. I do not believe it is possible to fight ISIS and win the war with air force, with artillery, with military power. The fight against ISIS there's a war of ideas and delegitimation. They say it is not enough to say these people are not Islamists, because the suicide bombers they view themselves as true believers, and we have to delegitimize them to deny them an Islamic legitimacy. And you can do this only if you look at their beliefs seriously. They believe they are Muslims, but they are not. And I was friend with Muhammad, I'm still friend, but we haven't met for more than 10 years, with the former dean of the Sharia faculty in Al-Azhar and the minister of Awqaf, Dr. Zakzouk. And he told me when he was minister, he used to send scholars of Al-Azhar to the prisons to talk to jihadists and to convince them that what they are doing is not Islamic. And that was successful, but that was educational measure. This is a war of ideas. And this is, I think, we have to take seriously that Islamists and jihadists, they view themselves as the true believers. There's a book in the 50s, The True Believer by Erich Hofer, yeah? And this applies to them. These are not heretics, they are true believers, but they have a wrong understanding of Islam. And we can do this only in talking to them and delegitimizing them. And then number 4, the idea of Hobsbawm of invention of tradition. This is a very important idea, and it is focal to my reasoning about the issue. Now, in the third part of my lecture, I want to focus on determining what is the Sharia state. Yeah? The Muslim brothers view themselves, number 1, as the avant-garde of Islam. Number 2, they view the majority of Muslims and also majority of the Ummah, not only in Egypt, that there's a setback and they are falling back into Jahiliyyah. So they know, the Muslim brothers know very well what Islam is, but the majority of Muslims don't do that. Yeah? And I have a proposition for you. How can we qualify this thinking? Number 1, avant-garde. This is, remember, avant-garde, the term is very important. This is not an Islamist. This is not an Islamic terms. Yeah? Al-Tali'a al-Islamiyya. Yeah? Then the majority of the Muslims are in Jahiliyyah. And number 3, they want to establish a state order that reflects the requirements of the Sharia. But I said to Dr. Siraj, please do not feel this is mumalaqa. This is mumalaqa, is hypocrisy, and this is not my my way. I'm a very honest man, and I had great problems in my scholarly career because I said some leading professors, I don't like you, and I think what you're writing is trash. Yeah, I did that, and I paid for that dearly. Yeah, so I don't like al-mumalaqa, but this is not mumalaqa. I have about in 20 different countries in a time framework of about 20 years, more or less, yeah, about 2,500 interviews, yeah, with Islamists here in Egypt in the 80s, in Indonesia, in Pakistan, in Morocco, in Senegal, and I have not ever met an Islamist who could speak about the Sharia like Dr. Siraj does. Yeah? But if you are willing to sacrifice your life for the Sharia, so you are supposed to know what you are talking about. Yeah? But you see, in our private communications and also yesterday listening to his lectures, I said, I wish I could meet an Islamist who could talk in this way about the Sharia, but I did not. And this is a social fact in itself. Now, the Sharia, I mean, as this is well known to you, and I shall not rehash, Sharia is composed of ibadat, mu'amalat, and hudud. But in medieval times, there was, this is disputed, I know that, but I adopt this interpretation. It might be wrong, but I follow it, and I continue to follow it until it's proved that it's wrong. Yeah? In medieval Islam, there was a kind of separation between siyasa, and siyasa does not mean, in Old Arabic, doesn't mean politics like today. Siyasa in classical Arabic in medieval time means administrative policies of the state. This is siyasa. And there was a separation between siyasa and Sharia. And the ruler, the Khalif, was in charge of the siyasa, decision-making, administrative action, running the state, the polity, and the qadis and the muftis were in charge of the Sharia. So there was a kind of separation between Sharia and siyasa. And I think this is a model that we need today, yeah, to emulate with. Yeah? For instance, also this is very important, and yesterday there was, in the third session, that was, you were gone probably, yeah? You missed it. There was a discussion about the fitwa and the qadi system in 19th century Egypt. And I was very impressed. I think the two professors are not here, yeah? I was impressed by both of them, in particular by Professor Ashmawi. He described the system, and he said, as you said today, remember, he said, al-adala is number one in the Sharia, yeah? And adala is not only Sharia, in the Quran. Islam is about adala, justice, and but he argued on empirical basis, this is al-waqi' and the ideal. Al-waqi', the reality, in the 19th century Egypt, there was a lot of fasad in the understanding. He spoke in Arabic yesterday, so fasad means corruption. And I talked to him today that I liked his lecture, and he thought because I come from Germany and the United States, that I confuse linguistically fasid and fasad. So fasad is the phenomenon, and fasid is the person, yeah? So corrupt person. I said, no, I know this, yeah? You know, Arabic is my first language. Yeah? There was a fasad among the qadis and the muftis, and they were independent from the rulers. And he referred even to Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali intervened in the work of the muftis and the qadis and tried to compel them to make different rulings that they were thinking of. Yeah. So I mean, in other words, we have the model. The model is al-adala, justice, but in reality, there was fasad, corruption, and there was fasidun, corrupt legal scholars, be them muftis, be them qadis. Yeah? And after Mufti and Mursi, the same happened. He talked about al-Islam wal-adala in the tradition of Sayyid Qutb, but he banned the general prosecutor. He abolished the constitutional court, and he tried to silence legal scholars in the name of Sharia. This is skewed, at least. Okay, now I'll move to the fourth and final part of my presentation. What can we do? I think this is generally important. We live in a global world. What happened here in Cairo is within few minutes. It's known throughout the world. The media are there. The eyes of the media are even more open than the eyes of the mukhabarat. And so the reputation of Islam is not good in the world. I mean, I live in the West, and well, there's a system of political correctness. In the system of political correctness, it is not allowed to say bad things about Islam in the media, in newspaper. But when it comes to down to earth, when you talk to the people, most of the Europeans are prejudiced against Islam. Yeah? And the reputation of Sharia is bad as well. So what can we do? Because when Sharia is about adala, this is our religion. But in politics, Sharia is about the Sharia state, and Sharia state is not democracy. So what can we do? How can we rescue Sharia against the Islamist project of Shariatization? I still have 11 minutes, and I hope to manage within this time. Yeah? Above all, I think we have to return to the text, to the usul. I am a social scientist, and I do not operate with text. I operate with realities. Yeah, but Unlike experts on Islam in the United States who speak on television and write newspapers, who do not speak Arabic, if you do not speak Arabic, I think you can support me because Dr. Adam is not a native speaker of Arabic, but I'm 100%, please contradict me if I'm wrong. Do you think somebody could understand Islam without knowing Arabic? Yeah? But you see, most people, you know, they know little about Islam, and language also is a system of reasoning. And if you do not know the language, you know how do people think, yeah? And but I think the three languages, Farsi, Turkish, and Arabic. So I'm not Arabocentric, yeah. So I make sure I'm not Arabocentric, yeah. These three languages are important to understand what this is the core, the cultural core of the world of Islam: Arabic, Farsi, and Turkish. We have to return to the text and what Sharia means in Quran, and in the Quran we find a clear position that violence, the way it's practiced by the Sharia state, this is not in line with Islamic precepts. Yeah? And Sharia is a morality, and if you say Sharia is a legal system in the way like you want to impose an authoritarian state on the people in the name of Islam, this is wrong. And return to this verse in the Quran, ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَى شَرِيعَةٌ بِالْأَمْرِ فَاتَّبِعُوهَا. Yeah? And I quote again, جَادُ الْحَقِّ عَلِي جَادُ الْحَقِّ. That was really, these 5 hours with him. At the beginning, he was very reserved, and in the course of the 5 hours, there was a thaw, yeah, and he became nice to me. And that after 3 hours, he stood up and asked his assistant to bring 2 books, Bayan lin-Nas, and he gave me these 2 books as a present. Yeah, this is a very valuable present to me. Yeah, and so our religion is about hidayah, and not about recept. If you do not follow, I have stick, and you will be punished. And in the fundamentalism project, we agreed that religious fundamentalism, we studied in this project, we studied all religions, or to limit the claim, we studied all religions that have scripture, because religions that do not have scriptures, they are not susceptible to fundamentalism. Fundamentalism can only thrive in religions with scripture, and also with a monoistic concept. Like this is cute. I wonder whether you know this. In Hindu religion, there is no we Muslims have the Quran, the Christian have the Bible, the Jews have their holy book, but there is no one holy book in Hinduism. And there is no one God. There are 300 gods. And the Hindu fundamentalists, they adjust Hinduism to Jewish, Christian, and Islamic fundamentalisms, because these are the major examples for religious fundamentalism. Fundamentalism does harm to religion, but is a reality. It is, we live in an age of a crisis, and what leads to the politicization of Islam in Egypt leads also to the politicization of Hinduism in India, and to the politicization of Judaism in Israel. The social and political constraints for the politicization of religion are comparable. That's why our study was a comparative study of religion, comparative study of the rise of fundamentalisms, and to find similarities and distinctions between varieties of fundamentalism. But in Islam, al-usuliyya al-islamiyya is not about the return of the usul, but you see, they say, I saw this between, in a Jewish gathering, there was 2 Jewish scholars in Washington fighting against one another, and one said, what is your usul? And because they use also the term fundamentals, and they say, but your usul are not my usul, yeah? Because it makes about, the usul are selected. and selected, imposed, and reinterpreted. Like if say what is usul al-sharia is not in the understanding of Ustaz Ashmawi, but usul al-sharia in a fundamentalist manner is you select or you pick up what you want selectively, arbitrarily, and say this is Islam and this is Sharia. Therefore, it is important to go back to the text and to reveal differences between selective references to the text and a scholarly reference to the text, as you do in your work, Dr. Siraj, and to accept that the Quran is Kitab Hidayah. I don't know whether this can be consensus over this, because there are people who are also not fundamentalists, Muslims, but they say the Quran is more than Kitab Hidayah, yeah? So it is more inside, yeah? But I think this will solve a lot of problems when the majority of Muslims will agree we need guidance, and the Quran is our holy book, and it is our guidance, but it does not provide solutions for the governance. We need good governance. Well, the Quran tell you what about ethics, but how practically to engage in good governance, this is not in the Quran. Yeah? And also when it comes to sciences, like you see, it's unbelievable when you see al-hadid in the Quran. You see al-hadid, this is the basic of industrialization. Yeah? And see, industrialization is all anticipated in the Quran, but this is nonsense. At least we say it does harm. It does harm to Islam. Yeah? So, in this sense, I conclude with stating there's a need of separating religion from politics. I know this is a problem, but I think if you relate religion to politics in concrete manners, in a political way, yeah, it is you do harm to religion. But I do not go that far, like the French laicists. Yeah, the French laicists take religion fully away. Yeah, and I think Ibn Rushd provided a solution for this. Al-haqiqa al-mizdawaja. Yeah, let's say there's a religious truth. This is my iman. I'm a believer Muslim, and my iman rests on religious truth. But I'm a scholar. Yeah, when I'm a scholar, I have different methodology, and as a scholar, I separate wissen, knowledge from belief. I separate knowledge from belief, and I separate religion from politics. However, I don't go as far as the Turkish laïcs and the French laïcistes do, like a kind of abolishing religion. I would argue we need an ethical source, and Islam is a great source for ethics. But then we have to agree what is ethics. Yeah? So ethics does not include killing, imposition, discrimination, and what have you. This is not ethics. Yeah? But the ethic of governance is acceptable, and I published a book with an Indian Pakistani Muslim who teaches in the United States, Hashmi. Yeah? And we are not in agreement. Yeah? We disagree in many points, but when it comes to the issue of ethics, we agree, and we publish a book together, ethics, political ethics in Islam. I go for the separation of religion and politics, but I agree to add the word political to ethics and say there is the political ethics in Islam and we should follow it. And this it provides al-Islam laysa huwa al-hal in the way the Muslim brother argue, but the political ethics in Islam provides hidayah, guidance, and I go for this. Thank you for listening to me. Yeah.
Okay, great. So now we can take some questions. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so we have some time for questions. Is this like questions short as possible so that we can accommodate the largest
Okay.
number possible. Is that Mu'taz, Dr. Mu'taz, did you have a question?
May I introduce him? Because, I mean, he's modest. Dr. Mataz is a young scholar. He just completed his PhD at the University of London on political Islam and human rights. And I read some of his work, and I do support him as a promising scholar, but he's دكتور جديد.
Thank you, it's a great honor.
دكتور مطبوخ جديدا.
No, thanks a lot, and I really like your presentation. And in your recent, to be brief, in your recent writing, you were very critical of the dominant discourse or dominant narrative in Western academic institution concerning Islamism and Islam and how they perceive Islamist movement. So maybe you elaborate on that? My second question, I mean, in your conclusion, you focused on Sharia as an ethical source, as a source of ethics, and I agree with you, and your idea on that Sharia is a modern construction and how Islamists invented their traditions. This is something I think empirically even can be supported empirically from recent scholarship on the history of Muslim governance. For instance, Wael Halak, The Impossible State, the recent book on the impossible state, he proved that what's demanded by Islamists today is not is paradigmatically different from what was applying by Muslims in pre-modern society. My question, because in post-Arab Spring there was a debate in Egypt on constitution and Sharia, and it was a source of division and a source of violence also in Egypt and in Tunisia and many Arab countries. So your view now that Sharia should be out of the constitution. This is a direct question. I mean, Sharia should not be in the constitution, should not be a law, should not be a constitutional law. It's something, a source of ethics, full stop, but not to be interpreted by court or by legislator or become a source of power struggle and political instrumentalization in general. Okay, thank you.
Well, I have been living in the West since '62. And I studied social science, sociology, philosophy, history, but I studied, I have 2 PhDs. In Germany, you have to have, to become a doctor, this is a PhD, but to move further to a professor, you need, they call it the super German PhD. This is habilitation, yeah? And you know the title, this is just to make you laugh, just to, if you are, the second doctorate is Dr. Habil, yeah? For some people say in Arabic, "Inti doctor bilhabala," yeah. It's because it's habilitation, and so in the PhD committee for the first PhD there was professor for Islamic studies, and in the second one for the Dr. Habil was also a professor as a member, and they could have killed me, but they let me go. Yeah, so I'm in my legitimacy is that I know Western Islamic studies from within because I've studied them. Yeah, and in Europe, and also even more in the United States. Earlier, I mean in the '60s when I came to Germany, Islam was studied from a hostile point of view. Yeah. And so this is what Edward Said called Orientalism. Yeah? But my friend, Sadiq Jalal Azam, he agreed to the notion of Orientalism, but he said there can be an Orientalism in reverse. Like, you see, all Muslims are bad, and Orientalism in reverse, all Muslims are holy, yeah? Are best people. Yeah? And so what's now in the discourse in Islamic studies in the United States and in Western Europe, maybe less in France, yeah, but very strong in the United Kingdom, in Sweden, in Germany on the top. You are not allowed to be critical. And I say, I mean, but I studied philosophy in Frankfurt, and critical reasoning is part of academic education. But earlier it was allowed to malign Islam, and now criticism of Islam is considered to be maligning. Yeah? And this is a problem. And you see, because I'm a Muslim, because I'm an Arab, and because I come from a family, I hope you do not consider this boasting. There's a kitab, and the Orientalists, they know that, Mukhtarat Tawarikh Dimashq, History of Damascus, and there's a chapter about my family, and the Tibis, Banu al-Tibis, were the Qadis and the Muftis of Damascus from the 13th to the 19th century. And then I argue, somebody like me cannot be anti-Islamic or Islamophobic. So they allow me to speak, but then they, behind my back, they say, Tibi is orientalizing himself. So I cannot be an Orientalist, but I'm Orientalizing myself. And it is the atmosphere, I think the atmosphere for studying Islam maybe in Cairo better than in Frankfurt or in London. So maybe I'm exaggerating. But I was professor at the Hidayatullah Islamic State University of Jakarta, and there I wrote my book, Political Islam or Politics in Europe, and I was teaching all chapters of the book in my lectures. And I said, hereafter I went to California. I was at Scripps College, and people say, be careful. I said, I'm coming from an Islamic country, and I was teaching these materials in Hidayatullah Islamic State University, and I was at the time, working with, including Kustur. Kustur is the nickname of Abdul Rahman Wahid, the former president of Indonesia. But you see, this is there are limitations on freedom of speech, and the Islamists, they abuse that. Yeah, you see, if you criticize Islamists, you are considered in Europe or in the United States as Islamophobic. The other thing is, when it comes rules, the Sharia consists of rules. If somebody says that, and rules are legal rules or law, then I have a problem with this. You see, because I follow Fazlur Rahman. Fazlur Rahman says, quote unquote, Sharia is not a law. If somebody says that, this is a view. I would respect it, freedom of speech. However, say this is a human. This is not God. God does not say Sharia is a law. It's not in the Quran, and so but therefore I go against posting Sharia rules as constitutional rules. I wouldn't mind to say if Article 1 of the Constitution start with. Sharia is an ethics, and that the Sharia ethics should inspire the Constitution, but not as a rule. Yeah, but just, and it has to be mentioned. Sharia ethics could be source of inspiration, not of ruling. Yeah, source of inspiration for a Constitution. I would agree.
Right. So we should have another question. There's one question here, and then we'll have another question there.
Thank you very much for the lecture. You mentioned that you studied 2,000. You had interviews with about 2,500 individuals, and you said they don't have very good understanding of religion. My question was, which kind of religion is it? The Azhar religion, or the Azhar's Islam, or the, at least let's say, liberal Islam, or the Wahhabi or Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Baz's Islam, or they didn't have understanding of both?
So that's one question, and then maybe we can take another question here, please. And then we can answer both of them at the same time.
Thank you, Dr. Tibi.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to welcome you here in Cairo. I'm Mohammed Al-Maraki, a researcher at Azhar and Islamist also. I will not attack you, but I welcome you, and it's very interesting lecture. I have just a few questions. First of all, is to understand religion or Sharia as a morality. To what extent this is a modernization of religion? So this is step to understand religion apart from legal aspects is a process that has happened also to Christianity, to Judaism, to take legal aspect apart and to understand it in just relation between some person and his God is just a morality, internal, ethics. It's nothing about legal. to how extent this is just a modern understanding. It's not like how Islam is, how Islam is really, it's, like Ranke say, wie es eigentlich gewesen, how Islam is. The other point is about penal law, about hudud. You were making fun of some Islamists who don't understand hudud. Yeah, this is really funny, but is application of Sharia, is it only about hudud? Is this idea of hudud is out of the hegemony of the modern state? That's this is, it's the appearance of the hegemony of the modern state. That's why hudud is always in the service. It's always appeared, but application of Sharia is much more wider. It's about social, political, economic, ethical, moral aspects. So hudud is just a marginal issue. Application of Sharia is not only about hudud. The last marginal point is about, you said Hassan al-Banna said that Islamiyya or something. So the word Islami is an old word, very old. Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, he has the Maqalat al-Islamiyyin, but the connotation of the word Islam itself is different. So in his understanding, Hassan al-Banna means Islamiyyin means heretics. So he was speaking about heretical movement. So maybe Hassan al-Banna is using it in a very different or somehow different connotation. So I think this should be elaborated.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, but
I think there was one question and one question.
but can I
and 2
ask maybe
points.
two, because I did not take notes. I would
Yes,
forget,
yeah, that's
I would
fine.
forget
Yeah,
the question.
But I think the
Start-
last 2 were
come
just
on.
points. I'm not
Yeah,
sure there
okay.
were questions.
This
But there's a
is,
question and a question.
but to make there's when an issue refers to a text, so a dispute can be easily solved. So I mean, I can show you pages. I don't have it here with me. He uses the term al-Islamiyya. Al-Islamiyya. This is a new word. Yeah, I haven't seen this being used by any other person before. Al-Islam wa al-Islamiyya. So al-Islam, nicht as adjective, al-Huquq al-Islamiyya, this is not new. But to use al-Islamiyya as a noun, yeah, this is new, and it is in the writing of Hassan al-Banna. Now, okay, so,
Yes,
but
do you
okay.
understand the difference? He's saying it's the use as a noun versus as an adjective.
Yeah, okay. Adjective is not new, but as a noun is new. Yeah, okay. But you see, of course, I mean, there's no dispute about religion is more than a morality. Yeah, it's also religion is a practice. Yeah, but you see, what is religion? How religious behavior should be conducted? According to the Quran, this is on the individual himself or herself to determine how do I conduct my adherence to Islam. And no one has the right to prescribe to me how to do this. Yeah? And therefore, I would take, religion is more than morality. Religion is behavior. Religion is also Weltanschauung, to use a philosophical term. Yeah? And actually, it's a part of my presentation. Say, religion is not a law because it is more than a law, because it is a worldview. And so I'm aware of that, and I know. Yesterday, I was in Al-Hussein Mosque, yeah, and I saw poor people and how they're praying with passion, yeah. And I thought, remember we talked about this sister with Rauf, and I met him after returning from the Friday prayer, and I said, if you take religion out of these people, they have nothing else, nothing. So this is the substance of their life, and they are poor, they have nothing, but they have religion. And religion, my mother, I can a personal example, during the war, 82, in Lebanon, there was a dogfight, between Israeli and Syrian planes, and they dropped rockets. The Israelis say it is the Syrian Air Force. The Syrian Air Force says it's the Israelis. But it doesn't matter what. One of these rockets fell over our home, and my mother lost her eyes and her legs. And my mother was always a religious person, and Dr. Siraj knows, I learned the Quran first from her in the age of 3 or 4, and I, maybe this is, when I was 3 years old, my mother said to me, Bassam, Shaykh al-Subyan, قاضي حلب ومفتي الشام. And so therefore I was a religious authority at the age of 3, and my mother, if she were not such a religious person, she lived, she died 20 years later, but she lived 20 years without eyes, she lost one eye without legs, but you know, the belief in God, yeah, the power of Allah that give her life. And so I saw the people yesterday, and I would not deny that. So you know, that would be so academic. This is cheap academic to say religion is a morality and people can take it and leave it, but it's more than that. So I'm against institutionalization of religion as a code of conduct. Like in Saudi Arabia, if you don't go on time to the prayer, the police comes and lashes you, yeah? And so this is, I don't want that. So it's, when you want to pray, you pray. If you don't want to pray, God punishes you, but a human has no right to punish you, yeah? And so the institutionalization of religion and political code and social code, this is, makes out of Islam an authoritarian system, and I don't want it like this. This is the point. With you, you see, this is, it's not about academic knowledge about Islam. Well, Islam is a civilization. Islam is a civilization, is an heritage. So I was not acting as a professor, examining students about Islam, but I said, if you want to do something, yeah, like if you want to implement the Sharia, you must understand what Sharia consists of. And if you don't know what hudud in Sharia means, then your agenda is questionable. Yeah? And these students, I mean, were mostly students of natural sciences and technology that I have interviewed. Yeah? I did not interview, well, I went to the Al-Azhar. At that time, I was also friend with Zaghzouk. So but the Azhar people, that was not good for my research, because the Azhar students, they know what Islam is. Yeah? So I mean, they would pass the exam, or they would pass the test. But the other people, the concern was not an academic inquiry what Islam is, and if they know, but this is, are you knowledgeable about that, what you want to implement? And the majority of the people I asked, they failed the test. Yeah?
Good. Have we got more questions? There's one question in the back there, and another one up here. So in the back first. Shukran.
Hi, my name is Noor. I wanted to know the problem with Islam with modernity. If there is a problem, can you explain that? Briefly.
There was a lecture on this subject on Thursday, but we'll ask Dr. Bassam
because
to give a very short
Dr. Bassam said in number 3 in the lecture that modernity and Islam, there was some
predicament. Yeah.
Some problem.
Yeah, he will respond as briefly as he can. And there's one question here, Ya Amr.
Were you there 2 days ago? No, I mean, you were not there. ألقيت محاضرة بالعربية الحداثة والإسلام. Yeah. That was 2 days ago, but I cannot repeat the lecture, but I can give you some clues. Yeah? Okay.
So let's take this other question here.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, my name is Paulina. Thank you for the lecture. You mentioned problems in Germany in the sphere of Islamic studies of practicing critical thought.
Yeah.
Since about 5 years, it is possible for students in Germany to study Islamic theology and to become Islam teachers or imams. And I wanted to ask you if you think that critical thought in Islam is practiced in the schools of Germany, teaching Islam from an inner perspective.
Okay.
Thank you.
You got the question?
This is a very important question. Okay. Yeah. Well, I go first to your question, and then I come to you. You know, there is modernity is something new, and not only Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Confucianism, all these religions have a problem or predicament with modernity. Yeah? And this predicament can be dealt with in religious reforms. That's why the subtitle of my book, Islam's Predicament with Modernity, Cultural Change and Religious Reform. You see, I'm professor of international relations, but I was educated in philosophy. So my PhD is in political philosophy. So I have a German education in political philosophy in Islamic studies. And then I went to the United States. I became scholar of international relations. And international relations in the United States and worldwide are polarized politically. This is the problem of social sciences. Overall, sometimes I wish I were a natural scientist, I wouldn't have this problem. So you have the left and the right every place. One of my dear colleagues, I think he's still alive or he passed away, Anthony Giddens. He's still alive, yeah. He wrote a book about 10 years ago, Beyond Left and Right. He said, we need to address the issues and not from the left, not from the right. And in international relations, my science, and I come to your question, the left-wing people, the left-wing professors, they pursue political economy in a Marxist way, but not many of them, even conservatives, they do political economy. Yeah, and then the left-wing people do political economy, and the conservatives they do political studies, conservative security studies, dirasat al-amniya. And I argue, as somebody who comes from the world of Islam, living in Europe, there are cultural problems in international relations. And there's a cultural dimension, al-alaqat al-duwaliya al-thaqafiyya. And I introduced this. This is part of also my Islamology. And I argue we need to study this. Yeah? And I introduced the concept of cultural change. And I was running a project at Tufts University, the Culture Matters Research Project. The left-wing people, when they speak about change, they mean economic change. Economic change, how to fight poverty, economic underdevelopment. The other people speak about political change, yeah? Better security, better institutions. And I say, but there's also a cultural change. And I introduced the concept of cultural change into the study. And therefore, there is a predicament with modernity shared by all religions. And the solution is cultural change. This is the subtitle of my book, and religious reform. I go for religious reform because religion and you made this very clear today in your lecture. Professor Siraj talked today about, about the text and about the reality, and they do not go sometimes together. What you do, so then you have to involve your reason, and then you have to. My solution is you have to engage in religious reform. Yeah, and this is. And I will answer the other question. You see, in one of the professors involved. Is Professor in Münster, Professor Khoshide, is a friend of mine, and you know that he has family, he has kids, he goes to work, he goes even to the mosque with the bodyguards, because in Germany we have, well, that is now changing. We until the end of 2004, there were 5 million Muslims living in Germany. About 70% of them are Turks, 30% diverse from all around the world. But now there will be more Arabs than Turks, and the Turks and the Arabs don't like each other. I have no problem with this, and I succeeded. I was visiting professor twice in Bilkent Universitesi. I can also speak Turkish, yeah. And I was in Boğaziçi, yeah, in Istanbul. And the only thing, because my grandfather was Osmanli Pasha, so the Turks accept me. But the Turks in Germany, they say the majority of the Turks. The majority of the Muslims are Turks, therefore the professor for Islamic, he should be a Turk. But the German government did not care. And you see the Turkish institutions, they send Islam teachers to Germany who do not speak German and who know nothing about modernity. Yeah? And they know also, I interviewed them in one mosque. Farabi, to me, is I like Ibn Rushd and I like Ibn Sina, but I'm a political scientist, and to me the state has to be a secular state. And the first political thinkers on earth who designed a state as a secular state were the leader of the state is not an imam, he's a philosopher, is Al-Farabi. Al-Farabi was a Turk. You know, they don't know, haven't even heard the name. Say this is one of the greatest philosophers of Islam. They know, they haven't heard the name. And so there are ethnic fights. There are two kinds of fights. Political fights. Does the German state select the teachers, or Turkey, or Saudi Arabia, or Pakistan? Number two, the substance of the Islamunterricht. Yeah? Do we teach Islamic rationalism? Do we teach tolerant Sufi Islam? Or do we teach traditional Islam, or even Islamism? Yeah? Number three, ethnicity. There is when Muslims speak with the German government, we are all united. We are Muslims, but 5 minutes. I was in the Islam Rat during the breaks. The unity ended, yeah, because the unity was only for an American English, for the gallery, yeah, and so and German politicians do not have much clue about this, and they do not have good advisors. You know, I lived in the United States, and I know in Washington every senator has at least half a dozen of advisors. When they make interviews in television, when they speak in public, when they travel, for instance, when a senator comes to Germany, he gets an advisor on German politics, and he briefs him or her before doing that. But we don't have the system in Germany. And even, you know, when Mrs. Merkel talks about Islam, she does not get a coaching before that, yeah? And she says stupid things, and she would spare that if it's getting a professor of Islamic studies and sit with him half an hour before making a public appearance. So this is a problem in Germany. But these problems will become more because I am among the experts who predict that the Islamic community in Germany within the next 5 years will double, at least double, if not triple. And there is no political concepts for dealing with this reality. No political concepts and no plan. Yeah? And this only is a good mention. I think you are German, yeah? Yeah, so goodwill. The goodwill is wonderful, but goodwill is not enough, yeah?
Okay, we have time for a few more questions. There's one question here, yeah, please.
My name is Alfred Huber. Thank you so much for your enlightening lecture. There is one thing concerning Sharia. These days, Sharia is mainly used to promote war and differences and splits. So would there be any chance to use the term Sharia or the concept of Sharia in order to promote peace and in order to fulfill the realms of peace and to find peace in this very difficult times?
Okay. Mr. Huber is the director of the office of the German television here in Cairo, and it's an honor for me that you're here. And I wish we had much more journalists of this caliber who report about the world of Islam based on knowledge. Yeah? Yes, it is possible if my advice would be accepted, Sharia as ethical source of Sheikh al-Azhar's hidayah. Yeah? And say Islam is a religion for peace. But you see, when people who use Sharia in political terms, like say, I can mention a name, Tariq Ramadan. Yeah? Tariq Ramadan, I mean, there are people, there's two positions. One position, I present this, I was in a project at the Cornell University, and we had an Islamist among us as a researcher. And at the end of the project, we had a conclusion dinner, and I haven't interpreted. I said this in public in Cairo because you see, I'm honest. Yeah, my interpretation: it is forbidden in Islamic law or in the Quran to be drunk because if you lose senses. But if you drink half a glass of wine just for joy, not more than that, this could be permissible. This is different. And but this person who is very tough, and tough Islamist, and he was drinking red wine, yeah? And I told him, I justify my drinking of wine by limitations. Say half a glass and stop, but you are now in his third glass, yeah? I have been watching you. And you know what he said? We are in Dar al-Harb. And so and then in Dar al-Harb he's allowed to do that, yeah? And Tariq Ramadan moves further. He says, and people do not understand, he says instead of using Dar al-Harb, he says Europe is no longer Dar al-Harb, is Dar al-Shahada, yeah? And that means Europe is an Islamic space, yeah? But you see, Europe is not an Islamic space. We Muslims in Western Europe, we're about 30 millions, but 30 millions among 400 millions, yeah? But you see, and I do not want to impose ourselves on the others. I want to live in peace with Christians, with Jews, with Hindus, and also with people who do not believe. I accept, this is, for some, if somebody says, I don't want to believe, I say, وَإِنْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَأَمَنَ كُلُّ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. He gets his punishment from God, but I have no right. And you see, when you talk about Sharia, Arab and Turkish functionaries who organize Islam, they have dominance, hegemony in their mind, and I do not share that. Because if you want to talk, they say, Islam is a religion of peace because we say Assalamu alaikum. But say, I mean, this is this is not honest, because you have to do more, yeah. And for instance, when it comes to Egypt, yeah, I say it ganz open. I'm against applying the law of protected minorities, because a Christian Copt is for me 100% Egyptian citizen, and he or she has the same rights like a Muslim. But you see, according to traditional Sharia law, you tolerate a Christian as a Zummi, and I do not accept that. Yeah, I mean, it has to be on two levels: reformed Sharia, so because there are some concepts, Islam's predicament with modernity. Yeah, like in modernity, so people, religious pluralism is if you look at my book. Islam's predicament with modernity, I mentioned 5 areas where Islam has a problem. And one problem is the pluralism. And pluralism for me, people of different religions, they have equal rights. The only Muslim country that does this is Indonesia. Not even Turkey does it. If you are Christian and living in Turkey, you don't have the rights as a Muslim, even though Turkey is a secular country. But if you are Christian, or if you are Hindu or Buddhist, and living in Indonesia, according to the Indonesian constitution, you are equals. And I want this equality of religions. And to establish this, we need religious reforms. And they are not, at the moment, they are not in place.
Okay, so I think we can take maybe one final question. If not, yeah, do you have a question? Okay, I think that'll be our last question. You might want to have a drink of water.
Okay, no, okay.
Yes, okay. This will be the final question, and then we'll thank Professor Tibi.
First, thank you for your lecture. I have 2 points to ask about. First one, any Muslim may argue by saying the verse of Quran, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. So they consider Islam as a source of not only morality, but more than this. To rule by, we have to rule by Islam. This may Muslim argue by saying this. The second point, Muslims in general believe that the source of Sharia, the main sources of Sharia are Quran and Sunnah or Hadith. From your understanding of Islam, what do you think of those who believe that Islam with only Quran as a source of Sharia is more tolerant and more like peaceful religion? So they want to neglect the Sunnah or Hadith by saying this. It's not a confidential source of Islam. It's not kept by the promise of God that He will keep the Quran as a book, but not anything else. So What do you comment about this?
Well, to the first question, first I follow here the Mustashar Ashmawi, and he's more knowledge. When he passed away, God bless him. You know, the word hakama in Arabic has two meanings: judge and rule. And the Islamists, they translate this Quranic term, say man hakama mean rule, but I mean, you have the right to do that, but they say, I do not share this interpretation. I read this verse that you have quoted. They say, hakama means to me, in the Quran, judge. Yeah. And I judge in line with Islamic ethics is okay. But rule, between to judge and to rule is not the same thing. Yeah. The other thing, who asked for this abolition of hadith and everything is maintained just the Quran, was a crazy man, neighbor of your country, yeah? Who? Gaddafi, yeah? Yeah, Gaddafi wanted to abolish. This is crazy. This is also not serious, yeah? Well, maybe the use of hadith should be tougher because there are many things imputed to the Prophet which are wrong, yeah? And there must be other methods than Sahih or Ghair Sahih, Sahih Bukhari, but there are sometimes Sahih Bukhari, which I cannot agree with, but I'm not sure it is Sahih, yeah? But, the Quran is the Quran, yeah? But in a Hadith, there's a lot of problems, but the solution is not the Gaddafi solution, yeah? This is a crazy solution. So, yeah?
Source of religion, no more hadith. They don't neglect hadith at all, but just they use it as a source of wisdom, but not as a source of legislation. As a source of law and.
Yeah, this is I cannot solve this problem, but I say hadith and also the heritage. Yeah, this is very important for us. But I think today or yesterday we were talking about Tahtawi. Tahtawi, the Egyptian Tahtawi from Tahta. I like him very much. Yeah, he was the first Muslim to go and study in Europe, but he went to Europe, as you know, as imam, not as a student, but. We learn, I say like you are Talib and we are Talib all life. If you stop as a Muslim, if you stop being a Talib, you die, yeah? Yeah, so we learn, yeah? And so learning never stops, yeah? Tahtawi wanted to learn and he asked Muhammad Ali to allow him to study and he became a student, yeah? And in his diary, he says, these Christians, these French people, they have more knowledge than we do. In our culture, we have tafsir, we have nas, we have tafsir, tafsir al-tafsir, والتعليق على التعليق, والتعليق على التعليق, and this is our knowledge. And he says we must. He says clearly we must change this, and. We should keep the heritage. This is heritage, but go beyond the tafsir nas. Yeah? So to employ reason, and also, this is scandalous. Can you imagine that the ijtihad has only the meaning free reasoning. It was closed for almost 1,000 years until Afghani and others called for the Fatah Bab al-Ijtihad. Yeah? So these things should never happen again. So heritage, hadith and the tafsir al-hadith and the all commentaries, this is part of our culture and we should take care of it, but there are other sources of knowledge. So we keep it as our heritage, but I follow Al-Jabiri. Al-Jabiri, he says there are people, modern Muslims, who read Al-Hadatha Turathiyan. And he says, his alternative is, we should read At-Turath Hadathiyan. Yeah? This is what we need. Yeah? Okay.
Okay, well, let me thank you very much, Professor Tibi, for 2 very stimulating lectures and wish you a safe journey back to Germany. Thank you very much.